Okay, thank you. It's a real honour to be speaking after the legendary Tim Brighouse. He's been gone from Birmingham for 10 years now, and there's not a week that goes by in my job where somebody doesn't mention his name to me, so that is really quite a legacy for one man to leave. I'm going to talk to you briefly about some myths, what people think of schools in Birmingham, and what the role of a local authority is at the moment. The reality of that situation, some of the problems we're facing, and what our role really is, technically, and how we intend to work with schools in the future, and what as a council we're doing about that. So firstly, what do people think of us? In terms of our role as a local authority, there's a lot of myths out there. People think that we control schools. And when I first began in this job, I was doing a radio interview, and I was being asked about academies. And the interviewer said to me, "Are you going to be really upset when you can't control any schools in Birmingham anymore?" It's like, well, it's not quite like that. That's not the relationship we have with schools. And he was going, "No, but are you going to be really sad when you don't control schools anymore?" It's like, again, it's not like that. That's not the relationship that we have. When it comes to the national picture, I think nationally they're a bit confused as well as to what our role is. If you look at school improvement, has been a bone of contention recently. Michael Gove has made it quite clear that he expects schools to all become academies. He thinks the magical solution to school improvement is to bring in an academy sponsor and that'll make everything perfect. Ofsted, meanwhile, have said they're about to consult on a framework on how they're going to inspect local authorities for our capacity to improve schools, which to me is farcical because we've been encouraged to run our school improvement facilities down over the years, and budget cuts and the academy shift mean we're having to strip back further on that. So you have to wonder if there's another agenda there. Lord Heseltine is doing a lot of work with cities at the moment, and he outlined how he expects businesses to work with schools to help them improve. So you've got three different pulls there from national government as to who they expect to be doing this school improvement work. No joined up picture at all. If we look at what other councillors think of what our role is as a council, that's actually quite worrying. Now, I get some of the councillors who are the most ardent supporters in the council chamber of academies. They'll send emails to my inbox going, "Brigid, we've got this problem with school meals at this particular school, can you sort it out?" Or, "I've got this problem with SEN at this particular school, can you sort it out?" My favourite one was, "Brigid, this school is in the wrong place, can you move it?" And with all those three schools, I had to turn around to them and go, "I'm sorry guys, these are academy schools. If you've got nowhere with the head or the governor, you're going to have to go to the Secretary of State about that." And actually, some of our own councillors, who are big ardent supporters of academies, hadn't actually realised how much we were giving up as a local council and what the reality of that changed world was. There's a lot of myth out there. And the national picture, how does that view Birmingham? We get a bad rep. Andrew Adonis, I think, got mentioned by a previous speaker. He gave Birmingham a terrible write-up in his education book. And we have a lot of people going on about how our inner city education is terrible. So I'm going to bust some of those myths. One of the ones I hear a lot in my job is, all schools in Birmingham are academies. Well, right now, 13% of the schools in the city are academies. And over the next year, we're looking at only another 13% going. So the huge majority is still with the local authority, much slower take-up than in other areas. When it comes to GCSE results, again, we have a bad reputation. Last year, 60% of Birmingham youngsters leaving schools got 5 A to Cs, including maths and English, which is 1 percentage point ahead of the national average. We're beating the national average on that, and we have improved consistently since 2003, where we were at only 35%. In terms of all A to Cs, we're even further ahead. 88% of Birmingham kids got 5 A to Cs last year, against a national picture of 83%. We're 5 percentage points ahead of the national picture. We're actually doing very, very well here. And again, that was against 50% in 2003. We've been improving very steadily since then. In the early years, we're only 1% now, percentage point behind the national picture when it comes to attainment there. So at all levels, we are outperforming. If you look at other myths that get peddled, if you talk about Hodge Hill, everyone says 1 in 3 adults has no qualifications to their name, which is true, but most people assume that that means our schools are rubbish. Actually, the attainment there, again, is doing very well. If you look at early years, it's well above the city average for the attainment that children are making in the early years. Our schools are doing well there. And primary schools. Last year we had 59 out of 300 of our primary schools weren't meeting national floor target. Thanks to school-to-school improvement work that's gone on in the city, this year is only 16. So we plummeted from 59 schools at primary level not making target down to 16 in the space of 1 year, which is an incredible achievement actually. And we've had that work independently evaluated by the University of Warwick. And I think something the city should be really proud of. So the local picture is a lot better than most people think. We have a bad reputation, but it doesn't mean we're not facing problems. So when it comes to academies, our role as a city council is much more limited than a lot of people think. Quite often we just get the letter from government saying they're going academy, hand over the building. And sometimes that's the first we'll hear of it outside of formal consultation. Whether you agree with academies or not, we're left at the end of the day with a financial problem due to that policy. We pick up as a council the cost of conversions. We don't get any help from central government towards that. It's a huge sum of money. It's about 13k per school. The schools, meanwhile, get 25k each to convert or more of their PFI. The top slice that leaves the local authority to go with each academy is actually calculated as far more than each school has when it's with us. So each school takes with it, if you see what I mean, more than it was actually taking when it was with the council. So that pot for the rest of the schools in the city is ever decreasing. And then we've got all the other financial problems the council is facing. So we had to, heartbreakingly last week, we had to put through a package of cuts that amounted to £102 million in the council. And over the next 2 years, we're going to have to cut 48% of our controllable spend. And justifying spending money on things we don't have to spend money on is becoming very, very difficult. And in the education sector, there's an increasing number of things where responsibility is transferred to schools, and we're going to have to make some awful decisions in the next couple of years that I certainly didn't come into this job to do about what we continue and how we continue it. So that's the doom and gloom. On top of that, we've got the fact we have responsibilities but no power. So when it comes to planning for new school places, we have a statutory duty to make sure every child in the city has a place at school, but we don't have the power to enforce that because academies and free schools can pop up at random due to national government policy and create surplus in the system or not. And we don't get nearly enough money to provide places ourselves. The basic need funding we get as a council is barely enough to provide the places we need to, and takes no account of SEN provision, which is more expensive and we have as a higher percentage in the city. Okay, that's doom and gloom. And it is easy to get very, very gloomy in this job about what we can do as a council proactively to change things. So despite that, we're trying to be very positive. We came in as a Labour administration in May with a manifesto. It had been Tory Lib Dem before that. And we came in with a fundamental principle behind everything we're doing as a council. I believe the job of local government is to make people's lives better in this city for every citizen. To do that, we're looking at closing the inequality gap across the city and breaking that cycle of inequality that's existed in the city for far too long. How do you do that? You've got to begin with education. But education is just part of the picture. We've got to look at it along with health, along with safeguarding, along with all of the other things that impact on a child's chances in life, on the economy. We've got to look at it as part of that holistic picture. I think that's absolutely why the local council has to have a role in education going forwards. So schools are vital to this, and they can't do it in isolation as well, and we can't do it without schools. So we made a very clear statement when we came in, and said that regardless of what type of school you are, regardless of your government's arrangements, we want to work with you to make the lives of children in the city better. We want to change lives, not structures. So there's 3 key things that we've come in with. The first is an umbrella or cooperative trust across the city, which hopefully heads in the room will have heard about. We came in May, 2 years into Michael Gove's Academies Act. A lot of other cities had a 2-year head start on us, but we came in May. Very small number of schools in the city had gone academy. There was still an appetite to stay with the local authority or have some form of working together. But with all the problems I've described previously, we can't carry on as a local authority doing things the way we've always done them, as if the world hasn't changed. Schools have more autonomy than ever before. They have more control of budgets than they ever did previously, regardless of whether you're academy or not. And we as a city are facing big financial problems. So we've had to evolve a new way of working together for this new world. And what we came to was a cooperative trust across the city. Now, in some ways, I'm nervous of saying this as a Labour politician, but in some ways it's a preemptive strike, really, against the future. So my nightmare for the city is having 420 schools all pulling in different directions and competing against one another with no overall coordination in the city for the young people in the city. I think that would be a disaster for our young people and their future. So the idea is to bring together everybody across the city with an interest in children, whether it be in education, in safeguarding, in health, in their future, in employment, in the future, in the skills sector, and look at how we can best work together strategically for our young people. We're also looking at a sort of harder cooperative for those schools that want it. And I think predominantly primaries will really benefit from this because, frankly, the academy policy wasn't built for primaries, it was built for large secondaries. And with all of our services, I don't want it to be a choice of do we chop it or do we keep it, because that's an awful choice to have to make. With those services, we want to turn around to schools and say, okay, this is an unstable service for us to keep going, but if you want to bulk buy back into this through a cooperative or maybe take on running that service, or if we can have some sort of agreement there, can we find a way to keep what you really value in this city going despite the position the government's put us in? So we're having those talks with schools at the moment, and a shadow cooperative board is going to be put together within the next month to look at how we drive that forward. And we've got an internal service review looking at what we can put in there. When it comes to the wider relationship with schools as well, we're very much filling that space of civic brokerage. So the Education of Vulnerable Children Scrutiny Committee recently did a piece of work looking at our relationship with schools. I came up with a number of suggestions. One of the things that's often overlooked in this city is actually the human dimension to it outside of education. I grew up in a white monoculture area on the south coast. I grew up in Eastbourne. It was not a diverse place. Birmingham is an incredibly diverse place. It was interesting hearing Tim talk about RE and the place of religion in schools earlier and how we bring different cultures together. When I grew up in Eastbourne, I didn't quite see the role of RE in the classroom. I thought that should be an add-on separately. Faith wasn't a big part of life there, but faith is a massive part of life in this city. And we've got so many different communities living side by side. I think it's absolutely vital that young people in the city understand and respect each other's cultures and communities, whatever they may be, and have a local RE curriculum that reflects the amazing diversity we've got in the city. I think that's absolutely vital for the future of the city. And the second thing we're doing is around skills. So if you look at national policy at the moment, we've got a real mismatch of policy going on. If you look at the higher education sector, which is my background, the higher education used to be good at purist academia, that was their thing. But now employers are turning around and saying, well, we don't want to employ these graduates, they have the right skills. And the government's cottoned on to this. So in higher education, the agenda is very skills-focused and employment-focused. Universities are falling over themselves to put in employability awards into their universities and put employability skills into the curriculum and enrich their curriculums. Meanwhile, at regular school, the normal school system, what we have is a systematic stripping out of that from the curriculum. The agenda is very much, Michael Gove's pushing it, away from practical-based subjects and away from creativity towards purist academia, which is crazy, because if purist academia is your thing, then you're going to go off to university, get all your employability tacked on there, and off you go. If that's not your thing, and you're a practical person, you're going to go out into the real world a bit sooner, you're going to leave education without having any of that tacked on. Your talents won't have had a chance to come through. So what we're looking at doing in the city is look at how do we put that back into the curriculum, and how do we create incentives for schools to put that back in, because we understand that at the end of the day you're being assessed by Ofsted and your league tables. So we need to find ways to make it possible for schools to do that despite the national push towards just academia. So the main thing we're working on is the Birmingham Baccalaureate. And the word baccalaureate feels like a bit of a dirty word now because Michael Gove's sort of stolen it for his EBAC. Essentially, the EBAC were 5 subjects that came out of Michael Gove's head at the end of the day. The Birmingham BAC, the idea is to create an employment-ready qualification that all young people in the city can aspire to. So the problem we've had is employers keep coming to us and saying, oh, we can't employ young people, they don't have the right skills, they don't have what we need, they can't work for us. So we've turned that back on employers and we've gone, well, okay, what is it you need? Go on, tell us what your model school leaver employee looks like. What is it that you want? Do you want them to be able to work in a team? Okay, how can we prove to you they can work in a team? Is that through taking part in a class project? Is that through playing for the school football team? What is it? Okay, you want them to be good at leadership. How are we going to prove to you they can do leadership? Is that through captaining the school football team? Is that through taking a lead in a volunteering project? If you want them to have work experience, okay, how are you going to help us get them work experience? So you're going to offer work experience opportunities to them. The Birmingham Back, the idea is to map out all of those things that matter to employers that they tell us our young people don't have, because I think they're wrong actually. Our young people do incredible, amazing things, but they're capable of doing so much more, and we don't always recognise them for the things that they do, and we don't always make it easy for young people to do those amazing things. There's a lot of inequality in the city. We don't make it easy for young people to access those opportunities. So the idea behind the BBAC is find out what matters to employers and what's going to make that difference to kids in the future, recognise kids for when they've done something brilliant, make it easier for them to do those things, and then we can hold these children up and say, look, you say you can't employ them, they have ticked every box that you were asking for as an employer. It'll make employers look twice at children who don't make the magical 5 A to C's. You know, so often children just get dismissed out of hand if they don't have that. But if they can show, actually, you know what, I can communicate with confidence, I can work in a team, and I can turn up on time, and I can do all these things. You know, just because you're good at academia doesn't mean that you can do all of those things, actually. So the idea is to plug that back into the curriculum through the Birmingham Back, which we're currently working on. We've also got an apprenticeship strategy, and we're working with people like business in the community to try and get stronger links as well between employers and schools and to broker better relationships there. And the third thing is really an integration thing, because we recognise as a council that improving a child's life isn't just about what we do in school. That's of absolute vital importance, and schools do amazing work, but we've got to make sure that we're coordinating everything else that happens for the child. So when it comes to health, I'm the Vice Chair of Birmingham's Health and Wellbeing Board, or will be when it goes live next month, and that's specifically to make sure children are being represented there. So one of our key priorities for this year is safeguarding, because as you'll be aware, we've got a lot of improvement work to do on safeguarding in this city. One of the other ones is childhood obesity, and how can we make sure kids are getting a healthy start in life. And I'm on the board for that reason. We've got a slightly unusual cabinet structure in the city. We've got a cabinet member for social cohesion and equalities. And when it came to free schools, grammar schools, faith schools, and how we look at expanding or not that provision in the future, I actually took the view that that's not my place to decide from an education perspective. I want kids to go to an excellent school, but I preferred that question to the social cohesion and equalities overview and scrutiny committee to look at from that perspective, because I think it's vital in a city such as Birmingham that we have children from all backgrounds mixing, that every kid gets an equal chance of a fantastic start in life, and that I think actually that policy, it should be decision should be taken with that in mind. So I preferred it to them to look at. You know, we're doing other things to try and protect children as council as well. When it comes to council tax benefit, again, we've had to take some horrific decisions regarding how we deal with that in the future. It's another of those examples where the government's devolved it to us but not given us enough money to deliver it how we'd like to. But we've protected families with children when it comes to council tax benefit for that reason. When it comes to children's centres, again, in this year's budget, none are closing in the city. It wasn't easy, given the budgetary constraints we've had, but no children's centres are closing this year because we've recognised their importance and the start it gives them in life. And when it comes to early help, we've got a early help strategy that's about to be improved and hopefully financed by the Health and Wellbeing Board, looking at how do we help children when things start to go wrong in their lives. They're having trouble with their families. How do we get in early and make that intervention before things get critical? And SEN is getting a revamp as well. We're having a new strategy on that that's in work. So that's an overview really of what we're doing. We're working with an inconsistent government. If you look at the government's policy on the health compared to its policy on schools, public health has been devolved to local authorities, which is absolutely fantastic for us to coordinate. Schools, meanwhile, you've got the polar opposite policy. That's being fractured and fragmented and sent out into the ether. So completely opposite policies on that, which begs the question really about some of the ideologies behind those strategies. And I think it's absolutely vital that we keep working together as a city, regardless of what type of school. We've got a complete patchwork of schools across the city. Every type of school or collaboration it is possible to think of exists across the city. What's important to me is giving every child in the city the best start in life. I think Birmingham's already doing far better at that than most people give it credit for, and there's a lot of great work that goes unrecognised. There's obviously loads more we can do, and I think we can only do that by working together. So that's an overview of what we're doing. And I'll leave you to ask any questions. Thank you.